What is up, everybody? We are live. Welcome into another live show here tonight. It's going to be a fun one because we have more and more Big 12 coaching news, man. This coaching carousel is getting pretty crazy. You can't turn anywhere right now without seeing some rumors about what's happening with Matt Campbell, what's happening with the TCU job, potentially Deion Sanders, although we did get a negative update on that earlier this week. But man, beyond that, Dave Aranda seemingly is the hottest name right now in the coaching circle. Lincoln Reilly. There were Lincoln Reilly to LSU rumors this week that he was forced to address at a press conference. We have all sorts of stuff. And that's not even getting into Steve Sarkisian at Texas, who got what's typically the dreaded vote of confidence, although at this point, being just 1 year in, I'm sure that is a legitimate vote of confidence from Chris Del Conte at Texas. But I think there are some pretty clear motivations at play there for why that happened at UT. So that's the college football playoff rankings. Also reflecting very kindly right now on the new look Big 12. And that can kind of include Cincinnati. I think we can discuss Cincinnati's situation right now and see where the Bearcats are at and the likelihood of getting into the playoff. I think they may well find themselves in the playoff rankings next week. In fact, I would predict that, and I will tell you why here on this show today. Hop in the chat. Yes, I know, Rob. I see my K-State fan followers in here are going to be a little frustrated because the basketball game is starting in 5 minutes. K-State is playing Omaha. I had no choice. I'm sorry. But because of my schedule, yesterday I had a friend come in town last minute that I had to go see that I had not seen in a long time. And tomorrow I'm recording the pregame show for K-State football this weekend. So this was my only window. It was my only window. I apologize, Rob. I just had to do it. I'm still trying to get you guys content, working with a very busy schedule these days. But get in the chat. Let me know your questions, your comments. I will get to some of those as we roll on. But I remind you, as always, if you do want to make sure that your question or comment gets up to the top, and I do see it, you can donate by clicking the $ below the chat box where it says say something. That is a surefire way to get my attention and get your question answered. All right, let's start with the coaching carousel because honestly, I think that's more interesting to me than the playoff rankings right now. And I know in some ways I don't know if that's like hypocritical. I have complained at times about like, hey, let's just get to the games. Let's not talk about all this frustrating stuff outside of it, whether that's been Texas and Oklahoma leaving or the TV numbers with the Big 12, whatever. But I think the coaching carousel stuff is fascinating. The Big 12 is as much maligned as the Big 12 is on a national scale. Much as people don't really give the Big 12 much respect at all, how about the fact that the Big 12 is like the epicenter of the coaching carousel right now between Dave Aranda, Matt Campbell, and Lincoln Reilly? And if you want to throw in Steve Sarkisian there, we can do that for good measure too, like whether or not Texas needs to be firing him after losing to Kansas in a disastrous start to his head coaching career. But in all seriousness, man, Matt Campbell and Dave Aranda, those are two coaches from the new Big 12. And they are like the two hottest names out there that are mentioned for almost every single major job that's open, of which there are many right now because Washington and Virginia Tech have now been added to that list as well. And so Matt Campbell and Dave Aranda become even more popular names right now because of a scarcity of resources. You have a lot of jobs and you have a lot of, I wouldn't say unqualified candidates, but you do not have a large pool of really sexy big name candidates for a lot of these schools with big jobs like USC and LSU to be choosing from. So they become even higher commodities. And I just find it very, very ironic that this league that nobody respects, right, and says nobody can play any football in this league, all of a sudden everybody wants the head coaches. Everybody wants the new look Big 12's head coaches. Let's throw Cincinnati in there too, because if we're talking about the new Big 12, Luke Fickell, also a name in every single one of these jobs. So you've got Luke Fickell, Matt Campbell, and Dave Aranda, all three being mentioned for all of these jobs that you see open, the major ones right now. So that should be some little bit of respect to the Big 12. Maybe also a little bit of respect to the Big 12 that there are 5 teams from the new look Big 12 in the latest college football playoff top 25 rankings. Shout out to Houston climbing in there at number 24. And this league deserves some respect. And this, again, is back to why I started this channel in the first place, or positioned this channel as the Big 12 channel. It's because I want to raise awareness about these things. We need to be raising awareness about these things and framing them in their proper and appropriate light, which right now would be recognizing some of the strengths that the Big 12 does have, both new and old, but in particular new when you hold it up into the light right now based on how things have gone so far this year. BYU has helped. I see AMAC in there saying, go BYU. BYU has definitely helped with all of this. BYU has really helped, and I hope to continue to see BYU win. So let me start in here with some of the coaching rumors that have gone around this week. I was just reading an ESPN Insider article right before this, and the ESPN Insider article said, as far as Washington goes, that is the first job that it was talking about that brought up a Big 12 coach. And I appreciate the donation, Troy. I see Troy Hester hops in there with a donation. Thank you very much, Troy. If you want to be like Troy, click the $ below the chat box where it says say something. You can get your question or comment up to the top there. So Washington, it says as Washington scrambles to begin a coaching search, 2 names should get significant interest: Baylor's Dave Aranda and Iowa State's Matt Campbell. What did I just say? Like every major job that comes open, it's Aranda, it's Campbell, it's Fickle. 2 names that should get significant interest are Baylor's Dave Aranda and Iowa State's Matt Campbell, sources say. Former Huskies coach Chris Peterson, expected to advise athletic director Jen Cohen in the search, thinks fairly highly of both Aranda and Campbell. Aranda's ties to the West Coast and success this season at Baylor have significantly boosted his stock. He might end up having his pick of Pac-12 jobs between USC and Washington. So, yeah, here's the thing. If I'm a Baylor fan right now, I would be extremely concerned about what's going on with Aranda and his future, because as candidates start to shrink, as the pool starts to shrink, which Mel Tucker reportedly is getting offered a 10-year, $95 million deal at Michigan State to stay in place. They're about to give him just a crazy, crazy raise to stay. That would take away one of the candidates that was being mentioned for LSU. So now Aranda potentially becomes more viable for LSU. Obviously, he's being mentioned here for Washington. And before this, like earlier this week, I was talking to someone who told me that Aranda and USC was really heating up because he does have some West Coast ties. So a West Coast background there for Aranda makes him pretty attractive at USC. Now, he's not like personality-wise what I would expect at USC, but maybe USC is realizing the thing that Texas will not, and that is like just get a quiet program builder in there instead of boisterous big name. Or sexy name that you think you can sell. I digress. Either way, right now it looks like Aranda is going to have his pick of a bunch of jobs. So that is the way that everything really seems to be moving there. Like everything I had been told this week was leading me there, and then just doing a little bit of extra research today, reading what people are saying across the country, it does seem to be like there is a lot of buzz about Aranda going to one of these jobs. Now, what I would caution you if you're a Baylor fan about this, because look, I love what Aranda's done this year. Huge fan of Baylor and the way that they play. Like I just enjoy watching their team. Tough, hard-nosed, physical. They run the ball really well. They've got a great defense, and they have a capable enough quarterback. What I would tell Baylor fans, and I think I mentioned this maybe earlier this week on the channel, but we've seen now Baylor going back to Art Briles and then Matt Rule and now Dave Aranda. 3 consecutive coaches have been able to win at least close to Big 12 championship caliber level. It was Big 12 championship caliber with Briles. They got to the Big 12 title game with Rule, and now they're here on the verge of potentially a Big 12 title game appearance with Aranda. So I would be pretty confident if I were Baylor that I could go get another coach that is capable of doing that and keeping the program at least close to what it has been. Now, it's hard to continue to deal with the turnover and all that. I get it. It would not be ideal. It would certainly not be ideal for Baylor, but I don't think Baylor should be like in panic mode, pounding the panic meter or the panic button, pounding the panic button. I don't think you'd pound the meter. You get what I'm saying, right? You understand what I'm saying there. I don't think it's freak out time for Baylor, even if they were to lose Aranda. But if you are somebody that's like dead set on like Aranda was going to be the guy and that's it, then yeah, I would not be feeling real great about that right now, because I think he likely will be coaching somewhere next year just based on the way all this is going and the way that he is going to have plenty of options. Now, maybe Baylor steps up to the plate and gives him a massive raise. That seems like at minimum something that's going to happen here. Like at very, very minimum, Dave Aranda has made himself a lot of money this year because Baylor would have to really, really pony up with a nice compensation package to have a shot at keeping him. But that's a good problem. I mean, this is another thing I will always stress. And I went through it when K-State was looking to replace Bill Snyder, and these discussions about, all right, do you just get somebody that you think is going to stay there long term, or do you try to go to the other side and make sure that it's just the hottest candidate you can get? My play is always just get the best coach that you can. If you think he's going to job jump or you think he's going to leave after a couple of years, if he's able to do that, he will have made your program discernibly better, and you've done your job. So Baylor, even if Dave Aranda were to leave after 2 years, getting the program back to the cusp of Big 12 championship contention. Well, they're at Big 12 championship contention. Getting them to the cusp of Big 12 championship here in 2021 in 2 years. Yeah, you take that, man. You take that and run with it. And now you've proven that another coach can win at your job, which should make it more attractive to the next guy. So I would never fault Baylor for that. I would never be concerned about that element of it, that aspect of it. No, man, you take it and run with it and take everything you can out of what Aranda's run has been. Bry Guy, live Sunday during the Chiefs, live tonight during the basketball game. What's going on? It's just my schedule, Bry Guy. That's the only way I can make these things happen, man. I can't tell you how busy my life has been since moving to Kansas City, starting a new day job, and then just trying to squeeze in all these other elements. It's pretty crazy right now, but I love you guys. So I hope you do appreciate that I'm still doing these right now, because I am just wall to wall packed. I do not have any free time. I'm still trying to find my own place to live here in Kansas City, although I think I am close on that front. So yeah, I will mention again, donations. You click the $ below the chat box below where it says say something. I am working pretty damn hard to bring these to you right now. Oh, what's up, Casey? Appreciate that, Casey. We need to catch up and grab a beer sometime, my friend. Much appreciate that, and appreciate the love from Eric there, saying so happy that you're doing these. Here's another little nugget on coaching searches in the Big 12 that I found. And you guys saw the video that I did earlier this week about TCU and the Deion Sanders thing. So Drew Davison, who's been all over that coaching search from the Fort Worth Star-Telegram, had reported that Deion Sanders at least is not totally out of it, but the conversation right now at TCU is moving away from him and to other coaches. And it's getting more boring. I have to be honest. This is the one part of it that I am just extremely disappointed in with TCU. It was so exciting there for a minute where it was dude, Deion Sanders bursts on the scene out of nowhere. He's interviewing really well. They want to try this out. They think he can get great talent there. Then Matt Campbell was being mentioned pretty heavily. And now Campbell was still in the running according to the last Davison update, but he was not one of the top two that were being discussed right now, which were Billy Napier of Louisiana and then Sonny Dykes of SMU. And that is the part that is just really boring. Sonny Dykes, I get it. That was supposed to be the hire from the beginning. And I'm not saying I think he'd be a bad coach really at TCU. It's just, as an outsider, that is so boring compared to everything else that could be going on. Here's what the blurb from the ESPN Plus article said. It says, the TCU search is believed to be focused on SMU's Sonny Dykes until diverted elsewhere. Although SMU is set to give Dykes an enhanced contract to stay, the school can't offer the advantages of playing in a Power 5 conference. SMU likely won't be playing in the AAC title game, which could free him up to make a move before the November 27th regular season finale against Tulsa. And that is something that is of note here, I think, because with the way that signing day is structured now, where you have that first initial signing day in December, early to mid-December now, that has put more pressure on schools to get these coaching searches done, these decisions made earlier, because you feel like you can't lose a recruiting class. You need to go through. Most of the kids are signing on that first signing day. Doesn't mean it's over, but most kids are signing then. So there's a feeling like you need to do that. And I get it, but I would also mention, there have been some hirings, like Mel Tucker at Michigan State comes to mind. We'll see about Lance Leipold at Kansas long-term, but certainly right now, I see all the Kansas greater than Texas stuff in the chat. Right now, it seems like a pretty good hire for Kansas, right? And that came very, very late in the game. So I don't know that it's a necessity. I think if I were a school, I would still, if I thought I had a shot at a Matt Campbell, a Billy Napier, somebody that to me, both of those guys would be higher up on my list if I'm TCU than Sonny Dykes would be. I would not hire Sonny Dykes just because you can get him in a couple of weeks earlier to recruit for this one class. You got to be thinking bigger picture and more long-term than that. And I like Billy Napier. I like Billy Napier a lot. And I would put him higher than Sonny Dykes. I see, who was it? Tommy in the chat, Napier to TCU with the fingers crossed. Yeah, that is, of all the candidates that I've seen at TCU that seem, I mean, like Matt, I know Campbell's been mentioned, and I'm going to get to that because I see a donation here talking about this. But I still don't think he would take the job ultimately. He's thinking, the reports are that he's thinking about it. He didn't hang up the phone, but I still doubt that he would ultimately take the job. I don't think Deion Sanders is realistic from like TCU is going to go for that. So out of like realistic-ish candidates here, Napier would be at the top of my list if I were TCU. And that may even be, I don't know how coveted Napier is going to wind up being. I feel like Billy Napier is the kind of guy that could actually wind up with a better job than we anticipate right now, just because the resources are scarce. There are not a lot of really high-level slam dunk candidates out there. I mean, like, what if Florida gets involved here too? Like, that's another thing. If Dan Mullen gets fired and Florida decides to go in the market for another head coach, there's another just blue blood major job looking for somebody. And that may be the type of job where like Napier could slide in. So I think this is where like TCU is going to have to be patient and really, really continue to wait. So if I were TCU, I would stress, I would continue to do that because I think you can do better than Sonny Dykes. I do. I've seen Sonny Dykes be a Power 5 head coach, and it was pretty blah. So if I'm TCU, I would want to wait it out and see what I could do beyond that. Okay, so I see a couple of questions here. I'm going to get to Boom to the Sooners here just really, really quick, because otherwise it's going to go away faster than the other donations. So I promise, Iowa State fan with the Matt Campbell question, I'm getting there in just 1 second. Thank you so much, both of you guys, for the donation. Boom to the Sooner says, would you wear a Sooners shirt on the air with us if the Sooners somehow pull off winning the Big 12 championship? No, not if they win the Big 12 championship. I tell you what, if Oklahoma wins a national championship as still a member of the Big 12 conference, then we can talk. Boom to the Sooner. That's listen, you guys are Oklahoma. You're not about Big 12 championships. You're beyond that. This is about national titles, all right? We know you can win the Big 12. We know you can win the Big 12. This is about natties. But Boom to the Sooner, we're going to have a discussion later on here in this chat, because Lincoln Reilly to LSU rumors are really heating up here, okay? Lincoln Reilly to LSU rumors, and he had to address it earlier this week. So we're going to talk about that as we continue working our way through the crazy Big 12 coaching carousel right now. Okay, Steven, I think you speak for a lot of Iowa State fans when you ask this question, and I'm glad that you do, because I would just like to clarify this here. But Steven, thank you for the donation, first of all. Really appreciate that. Says, do you even have a quote from Campbell that he has been interested in any of these jobs? If not, I would say that he is not interested. Well, I certainly don't have a quote from Matt Campbell himself, but all I have been doing this whole time, and I think I've just been getting relayed things people have said that's been said about me on CycloneFanatic.com and the Cyclone Fanatic podcast. And the thing that I will stress, and like people got this twisted during realignment, like all I do on this channel, and I make it very clear. I mean, I state it, I read it when I say it. I'm aggregating information from other sources and then giving you my opinion on it. So, Stephen, where that has come from is that on multiple occasions over the last 2 weeks, the Fort Worth Star-Telegram, right, legitimate, bona fide news outlet, has had two reporters, one being Mac Engel, who's really more of a columnist, but then the other is Drew Davison, who's on the TCU beat. Those two have both reported that not only is he on TCU's list, but that he has at least been listening. Okay. Now, I don't have the direct articles up there. If you just go look, Stephen, through my channel, you can find, like, for instance, the Matt Campbell video, standalone video that I did last week. That will include the direct quotes from the Fort Worth Star-Telegram article that mentioned Matt Campbell. So this is not me pulling it out of nowhere. It has come from the Fort Worth Star-Telegram. And again, multiple articles. You can go back through their archives and read over the last couple of weeks, and you'll also find that information from both Drew Davison and Mac Engel. Now, part of this is that info a lot of times is behind a paywall. So, yes, I did actually pay. You're welcome, Fort Worth Star-Telegram. I paid a little bit to read those. And Blake, $57.85 because OSU greater than OU. Fair enough, Blake. Fair enough. Get in that talk before Bedlam. Thank you for the donation. But yeah, I have not been I didn't pull TCU out of nowhere. And the reason I think this has been such a sticking point is just like Iowa State fans can't fathom that TCU would be a job he would jump to because he's turned down all these jobs in the past. And again, my case the whole time has been the timing is different right now because of everything Campbell is losing. You guys can vehemently disagree with me if you want, but I think when you have this much coming back and you're about to go 8-4, 7-5, or 6-6 with it, it would make me realize I've kind of hit my ceiling here at Iowa State. When is the next time I'm going to have my first team All Big 12 quarterback, a Heisman contender running back, the Big 12 Defensive Player of the Year, and an NFL tight end, all back on the same roster, extremely experienced, and I'm still only winning, or I'm still losing 4 to 6 games? To me, that tells me I need to go somewhere else to really elevate myself. TCU, you are going to be able to recruit better, more consistently there than you are at Iowa State just because DFW is in your backyard. Matt Campbell is doing one hell of a job to recruit a top 30 class to Ames, Iowa. Think of what he could be doing with DFW and the resources of TCU. So that's always been the point. It's made sense to me why Campbell at least wouldn't be hanging up the phone on TCU this time around because of the timing. Again, still strike while the iron's hot, while your coaching star is still pretty hot, and next year is likely going to be a rebuild, and it's going to take a little while to get back to this level that you were at right now. And I think that's probably where a lot of Iowa State fans and I disagree. But to answer the question, once again, it's a genesis. It all goes back to the Fort Worth Star-Telegram. So, Stephen, if you can tell the lovely people of CycloneFanatic.com that this has come from the Fort Worth Star-Telegram. Like, it is not me making up Matt Campbell rumors. I'm simply giving you my opinion on the Matt Campbell reporting, not rumors, the Matt Campbell reporting that has come from the Fort Worth Star-Telegram via both Matt Gingle and Drew Davison. So I feel like in a lot of ways, I'm like back in high school right now, like citing my sources here, going through like making a little bibliography about the videos and the content that I've had. But that's what I feel like I have to do there. And I think what happens here, it's the way everybody reacts these days. You see something that you don't like, you see something that you disagree with, which would be like, oh, Matt Campbell's going to leave. I don't like that. I disagree with that. And then you block everything out. You're not listening to where it came from. You see the messenger, you shoot the messenger. And so you guys come after me as opposed to like paying attention to where the information actually came from, that I'm just relaying it and giving you my opinion on it. So that's it. And again, the other thing I could say too, Stephen, you just asked do you have a direct quote? Let me just read. I read it earlier in this video from ESPN. I assume that you know ESPN. Two names that should get significant interest from Washington are Baylor's Dave Aranda and Iowa State's Matt Campbell. So, I mean, there's just another mention of him at least. And if you wanted a quote like actually from Matt Campbell, the only time he's been asked about it at a press conference, he didn't really give a total staunch denial. It was kind of a wishy-washy, just graze right over it and move on. I wouldn't say it was something that made it really clear that he was like entertaining anything, but it was certainly not the Mike Tomlin like outright denial, or even like it was not as strong as what Jimbo Fisher has done on a couple of occasions now, trying to shoot down the LSU rumors and saying that he's going to stay at Texas A&M. Boom to the Sooner. Why do you think Lincoln Reilly would leave for the SEC when OU is going to the SEC, and who would OU replace him with? Well, okay, it's a good question on like why would Lincoln Reilly leave. Let's get into Boom to the Sooner. Thanks for the donation. That's a good jumping off point to the Lincoln Reilly rumors. So the J-Boy Show, which if you guys are K-State fans and you follow my K-State content for a while, back to the realignment days, we had some fun with the J-Boy Show thing because he had Texas Tech and he had everybody in the irate 8 in the Pac-12 except for Kansas and Texas Tech, which was like the opposite of what everybody was saying. And obviously none of that came to fruition. None of it was true. So I don't know. And I'm not trying to attack the guy's credibility. He's on like Colin Cowherd's podcast network right now. Clearly he's doing a pretty good job. But the J-Boy Show reported that LSU offered Lincoln Reilly a $96 million contract. Obviously, Lincoln got asked about LSU interest at his press conference earlier this week, and he said, quote, "I coach at the University of Oklahoma. You know how I feel about this place and this program. We've been down this road many times before. You guys know where I stand, and that hasn't changed." So that's a denial-ish, I would say, for Lincoln Reilly there. And why would he go to LSU, Boom to the Sooner? I would just say that I think it's the best job in the country. I I think LSU is the best job in the country. I think Oklahoma is a top 10 job. I think LSU is the best job. And if nothing else, I heard Bomani Jones say this one time and it like clicked because I've always thought that because of the talent, like you're so close to so much talent and you just run the state. Like everybody in the state of Louisiana, you will always be able to get the best players from there to come to your school. You have unlimited amount of resources there at LSU and an unlimited supply of players. That's a big part of it. But Bomani Jones really underscored this to me when he said, look, Ed Orgeron and Les Miles won national championships at LSU. That's why it's the best job in America, because those guys won national titles. And I thought, man, like nobody has ever framed that better than just putting that out there. Like Les Miles in his prime, yeah, he did some good things at Oklahoma State, obviously. Like I'm not saying that he was a terrible coach, but he was certainly not Newt Rockne, and he was able to win a title at LSU. And same kind of thing for Coach O. And I respect him. I like him. There are some things that he does well, but like national championship caliber coach. And not only that, but like putting together one of the most dominant champions we've ever seen. That seems to be a real byproduct of the job. So I think that's a lot of it. Like it would just be going to take over the best job. It would be more money if he's really getting offered somewhere near a $100 million contract. You'd be talking about upgrading your money, being in a better job. You're already, I would actually play boom to the Sooner, the SEC angle against you in this regard and say, if I'm Oklahoma and I'm going to the SEC, I'm probably not going to be as prepared to win big as LSU. And I know LSU is down right now, but I would not expect that to happen or stay for too long. You could go take the best job in the SEC. I would tell you it's the best job. I think Nick Saban is the best coach. I don't think it's a better job at Alabama than it is at LSU. You could go take the best job in the SEC, or you could take, what would we call Oklahoma? Behind LSU and Georgia, potentially behind Bama, or you could take the fourth best job in the SEC. Where do you think you're going to have a better chance of winning? So it's like at this point, it's inevitable. You're going to have to go deal with the rugged nature of the SEC. Why not do it at the best school in the SEC while making more money and kind of resetting your clock? Like you would be inheriting a fan base that would be thrilled with you right away, very excited to have you. Whereas Oklahoma fans, I don't know that it's getting like Bob Stoops level of stale there. That's probably not fair to say. But this year has been kind of disappointing, and Lincoln has not been able to take that step to winning a game in the playoff. So I think there's probably some level of that going on at Oklahoma. So that to me would be the reason why. I still would have my doubts again about the rumors ultimately here. And I know it's not just the J-Boy show. It kind of been a Twitter rumor, pretty popular this week, Lincoln Reilly to LSU. So there have been some others kind of pushing that and going down that same road. But we'll see how it plays out. It just is when it gets to the point where the guy's actually being asked about it in a press conference, that's when you know, like, all right, this is at least getting interesting. This is at least getting very interesting when we're getting like non-total denial, somewhat denials from Lincoln Reilly in a press conference setting. Excuse me. Kenneth, that is the best comment that I've seen here in this chat in a long time. Kenneth says, I think your opinion is right on. You are a very intellectual sports person. That I am, Kenneth. I wish I could frame that. Thank you. Thank you for saying that. Very intellectual sports person right here, everybody. Right here. I've seen a couple people comment about the SEC Shorts video. I will give that a shout out. Go just Google YouTube SEC Shorts and watch the latest video they have this week. They are typically pretty spot on, but this one was really spot on. Taking some digs at not just Texas, but like the rest of the SEC. Anybody that's a college football fan could really, really appreciate that. So I would suggest that you go watch that. And speaking of good old Texas, Steve Sarkisian got the vote of confidence from his athletic director, Chris Del Conte, this week in a letter that was addressed to fans. So this is a move that you don't often see in year one. I don't feel like you have to see this in year one from an AD most of the time to feel like things are so bad and so out of control that you need to go get out in front of it and speak to your fan base directly about the coach and in pretty direct terms. So here's what was said from Chris Del Conte, the AD at Texas. Quote, it's important that we discuss the reality of the situation facing Coach Sark in our football program. It came up in Monday's press conference and is something we've talked about. This isn't to cast any blame or make excuses. It's just factual that we have some real depth issues. As injuries mount, it's even more glaring. When you look at it, 52% of our 2018 signing class and 46% of the 2019 signing class are no longer here. I say that to help everyone understand the real challenges we're facing. Coach Sark is building a culture. He has a tremendous group of coaches with him, and we are providing every ounce of support we can to muster help to redirect the program. So there are a couple things that I want to say about this. One being, I think to me here, it's very obvious. You can get frustrated, like I do. There is a level of frustration to me, looking at CDC being the next guy in line saying, depth is talent. Like, we don't have enough depth of talent at Texas, even though we've had 3 straight top 10 recruiting classes. There's a part of that is maddening. But I think Del Conte just has to say that no matter what right now, because what you cannot have happen at Texas is to fall into a cycle of firing a coach every year or every other year. Like, you cannot go fire Sark after year one. Short of you just being completely convinced that this guy has real problems, real problems, you can't go fire the guy. You have to give the program some room to actually develop and try and take hold. Here. So if you're going to do that, you know that you can't be firing the guy, but you know that he's committed what is, in a lot of Texas fans, a fireable offense, losing to Kansas at home, giving up 57 to Kansas, all of these things, and putting together a 5-game losing streak, like everything that's going on right now. You have to put the brakes on it as much as you can. And the narrative that, as I've been telling you here all season, has really seemed to strike a nerve and like be the thing that's driving a lot of conversation for Texas fans and Texas media, is that, well, there's just not enough talent here. There's not enough talent here. He's framing it more as depth of talent, but whatever it is, not enough talent at Texas. That's why this is happening. So if you're going to provide cover, you might as well provide cover with the thing that your fans are all talking about. And that's something that's going to play with your fans. It's like, yes, pin it back on Tom Herman. Right? Like, that's the other thing that you're doing here with this kind of statement from CDC, is not just trying to take some heat off of your guy, but it's turning the heat back on the guy before that everybody hated. Like, everybody was just done with Herman by the end of his tenure, even though he went 7-3 last year and certainly was not losing to Kansas. Everybody was done with Herman, so this is a way to throw it back on him. Hey, guys, remember how much you hated Tom Herman? Yeah, it's his fault that we're in this position. It's his fault. It's not Sark's. It's his. Even though, again, we went from 7-3 to now 4-6. Don't listen to that. Don't pay attention to that. Depth, numbers, recruiting class, 52% of 2018 is gone. Look at that. Be distracted by that. So I actually think, as far as it goes from an AD standpoint, that's pretty smart. I think it's pretty smart business from Del Conte to play it like that, especially, once again, me just seeing a little bit of what seems to have taken hold within the Texas fan base for a long time right now and what they are eating up. Now, the part of this that is very frustrating, once again, is like, dude, give me a break. Like, Texas, you're going to sit here and crow about all the resources you have, crow about all the money you have, and your place in the college football world, and you're going to go leave the rest of us losers in this loser conference so that you can go join the preeminent power in the college football world. But yet you're sitting here complaining about not having enough talent. Like, you guys haven't been able to bring in the talent. Like, there's a resource problem at Texas. It's just like, dude, there's a hand motion that I want to make to that I guess I don't know if I can, because I don't want to get flagged by YouTube. But it's like, dude, screw off with that. Like, just, you guys have more resources than anybody. You have legitimately been recruiting very well over the last 3 classes. Like, stars do matter. As much as there are exceptions to that rule, stars do matter. And you've compiled an awful lot of them. And you're sitting here, we're not talking about, if this were a conversation about being 7-3, and it's like last year, and you're having to give Tom Herman the vote of confidence, be like, hey, we don't have quite the depth of talent we need, but we're close, we're 7-3. Okay, that could be one conversation, but we're talking about a program that has lost 5 straight for the first time since before Darrell Royal was at Texas, and just lost to Kansas allowing them their first Big 12 road win since George W. Bush was in office. That's different than just being 7-3 and being like a couple of plays here or there from where you want to be. Remember, not only was Texas 7-3, but those 3 losses were by single digits last year. So like they were pretty close. They were pretty close. And now you're going to sit here and tell me like, no, it's just Tom Herman screwed it all up because we don't have enough talent. We don't have enough depth here on the roster. That part is just, you want to be like, man, go shove it. Like, go shove it with that. You guys, the return on investment at Texas is just gross. It's disgusting. All the wasted, bloated money that gets used up there for a football program that is mediocre to bad. A mediocre to bad football program. But I see the logic. Well, at least I see the strategy. I see the strategy here from Del Conte in doing this. And they had to bring Sark back. They had to bring Sark back. And quite frankly, if you're a Big 12 fan, while it would be hilarious to see Texas fire a coach and have to go through the turmoil of that program again, if you're sitting here like me, like, man, I was skeptical of Sark in the first place. I don't really think he's that good of a coach. Well, now Texas has just gone another year down the road with Sark, another year closer to the SEC with Sark. And if he's going to keep sucking, then they'll be headed to the SEC with a less stable and worse program. So that's your spin zone here. That's your spin zone if you are a non-Texas fan or somebody rooting for the downfall, the continued downfall, I should say, of the Texas football program. Okay, I have one more thing on coaches that I want to talk about, and it is actually Matt Campbell related. And please, you can donate if you would like to get your question or comment up to the top by clicking the $ below the chat box. Matt Campbell had a quote. I will actually say I feel like got taken kind of out of context this week. I'm going to defend Matt Campbell here in just a moment. First, though, shout out to Dan France. Thank you for the donation, Dan. He says, I'm always working when you're live, but never miss a replay. Just wanted to say hi and go Bearcats. What's up, Dan? Thank you for tuning in. Glad you're able to make it this time around. It was a little earlier today. And shout out to your Bearcats, who I'm going to talk about in the college football playoff rankings in just a minute here in this chat. So Matt Campbell, everybody like ran with this quote where he basically said, he was asked a question about like, you guys had goals of a Big 12 championship before the year. And he kind of cut off the question and said his goal was never to be Big 12 champs. It was to become the best version of ourselves that we could become. And he also said he wanted his team to be the greatest together team in the history of Iowa State football. That was his goal, and says that's still in front of this team. So he was trying to like basically brush aside any notion that the season's over already because they're unlikely to win the Big 12 and they're definitely not going to the playoff. And they had these lofty expectations from the outside world. That's not the kind of thing I'm going to crush somebody for. And this is where like I just wish, again, CycloneFanatic.com, like all these Iowa State fans could be in here listening to some of this because I feel like I take legitimate shots at Campbell when I do, and I don't go out of my way to just crush every little thing and be unfair. Because to me, it's unfair to like take that quote and really make much of it. That's him trying to control the narrative. Like he doesn't want his team to give up on the season, so you can't be out here saying like, well, yeah, that was our goal and we're not going to reach it. You need buy-in for the rest of the season. You want them to finish the season strong. And it's just a very coach speak thing to say anyway. Like coaches say stuff like that all the time. Like we want to be a little bit better every day. We want to be 1-0 every day. So that's what we're trying to do. You hear coaches say that kind of stuff all the time. I just brush that off as very much just coach speak. It's just coach speak. It's just a coach doing what he's doing. And again, trying to make sure that his team stays hyped up and into it for a big game this week against Oklahoma. And then wrap up the season, hopefully at 8-4 if you're an Iowa State fan. So not the kind of thing I'm going to get after Campbell for. I actually saw, I forget the guy's name, but it was one of the Cyclone Fanatic guys saying like, hey, this is a problem with the media. Quote gets taken out of context and everybody runs with it. And I would kind of agree with him here. Chris Williams, I think is his name. I would kind of agree with him here. Now, I haven't paid close enough attention to see like how much, if there are a lot of people that have really taken it and run with it. I've just seen some But even that getting some run is like, oh, what kind of a quote is this? Let's just chill on that. It's just a coach quote. That's a coach quote, is exactly what it is. All right, we'll transition here into the college football playoff rankings in just 1 second. But first of all, a hearty welcome back to Juan. Thank you for the donation, Juan. Very, very generous of you. Juan says, sorry, been MIA, John, but I also always watch your content every day. Go Cougs. Any thoughts on the AAC championship game in Houston? Well, I've got some thoughts, man. Houston, like, shout out to the Cougars. And that also segues into the playoff rankings because they have now made it in at number 24 in the college football playoff rankings. Finally, a modicum of respect for the AAC from the selection committee. Got number 5 and number 24 right now in the playoff rankings. So shout out there. I've just been wildly impressed, one, because everything I was kind of gathering from you guys at the beginning of the year, and when I say you guys, like Houston fans that had been hanging out here on Twitter that follow me, was that like it felt like the Holgorsen era was just over. It felt like he was written off. And I'll be honest, just paying like loose attention to it from the outside looking in, I understood. Like I kind of agreed with you guys. Like, yeah, this doesn't seem like it's going in a great direction. But he's been able to right the ship. They're clearly a dangerous team. I will be fascinated to watch them play Cincinnati in the AAC championship game, assuming that is what happens. I'm going to be fascinated to watch Cincy play SMU this weekend because that is certainly a capable enough team. And like I've got a lot of respect for SMU. I don't say that as in like I think Cincinnati is vulnerable as this bad team that could lose that game. I think it's Cincinnati is a very good team playing a pretty good team, and that can get real interesting in the college football world. And I think that will be the same thing when Houston matches up with Cincinnati. And the other part of it too is just it's helping out that new look Big 12, Juan, with Cincy or with Houston rather winning the way that they are and looking like another program here that could be pretty strong. I mean, the way I look at it right now is I thought UCF, my initial reaction was like long-term, UCF has the most upside of anybody that the Big 12 is bringing in right now. And UCF right now is at the bottom of the barrel of the teams this year, which is not fair to judge them on, certainly at all. You got to look at the body of work. And again, young program, state of Florida, all these things that I think are going to push them forward in the future. But that's kind of a good problem to have. Like if you would have told me at the beginning of the year, hey, UCF is going to be the worst of the new programs this season coming in, I'd be like, well, great. These teams must be pretty good. And they have been. They have been. The other three all in the college football playoff rankings right now. So those are my thoughts, Juan. And thank you for hopping back into the chat tonight and for the very generous donation. If you want to be like Juan, click the $ below the chat box where it says say something, and you can hop in here. So the college football playoff rankings, your headlines from that, top 7 remain unchanged. Oklahoma tumbled down to number 13. You knew that was coming. The committee clearly did not really like Oklahoma in the first place anyway. So dropping them 5 spots after a loss to Baylor, not shocking. Committee has had a lot of respect for Baylor throughout this entire process. And that certainly has not changed right now. But to me, the other headline here is just the new look Big 12 looks great. New look Big 12 looks awesome, man. You got number 5, number 9, number 11, number 14, and number 24 right now in the playoff poll. It's even better. It looks a little better in the AP poll because you have a couple of teams that are bumped up, particularly Houston. I think Houston is like 17 in the AP poll. So it looks even better when you take a look at the AP poll. But the playoff poll, we'll roll with that because everybody seems to be rolling with that for the most part when they use their rankings this time of the year now that they're out. Still a great look for the new look Big 12. A great look. And again, I want to just like snapshot that and send it back in time to the Stuart Mandells of the world and how those narratives got taken over at the beginning of all of this and like thinking that the Big 12 would have no chance and they're not going to be as competitive as the Pac-12. I mean, look, Oregon is still up there. I get it, but the ACC is totally done. I think Oregon has an L coming. And I think Oregon has an L coming this week, which will be Utah. And that would eliminate virtually the Pac-12 as well there. And the new look Big 12 still hanging strong with Cincinnati up there at the top of the top 5. So very strong stuff right now for the new look league. And this is the type of thing that like, no matter what anybody says, what this should do as a fan of the new league is just infuse you with some confidence here that it is still very possible for this league to be competitive, even all the way up at the top with a team like Cincinnati. So take some pride in that, instill some confidence, in yourself with that and take it and run with it. And that's what I'm doing right now. Like, it is legitimately just put a pep in my step and infuse me with some confidence that this is going to be a viable league moving forward. We'll see what the money's going to be. And I understand there will be some level of drop off, but I think the further and further, the deeper and deeper we get with this, the more and more it looks like that drop off, that level of drop off is not going to be nearly as much as what we thought at first, what the doomsday predictions and scenarios were at the beginning of all of this. All right, Bry Guy 2724. Bry Guy, thoughts: 18 playoff, use BCS rankings. First round is the week after the conference championship game. Higher seeds at home. Losing teams get to play regular bowls. I like that. I mean, I like that idea. I know everybody complained about the BCS when it was going on, but I think in hindsight now, doesn't really look all that bad, right? You take the bias, the personal bias of everybody on the committee out of the room there. We would no longer have to deal with a committee saying well, aside from playing the games, Michigan actually looks better than Michigan State. The quote that will live in infamy from earlier this week. I'm down with it. I would definitely be down with it. Although the one thing I will say, BCS rankings, I don't know. It'd be interesting to see how the new look Big 12 would fare in hypothetical BCS rankings, because the part of that you lose is obviously automatic conference champion. You want that for the Big 12, and all these new proposals include automatic conference champions. You definitely want that. The thing you'd worry about there is with the Big 12, if it's a down-ish year in the Big 12, will there be enough strength, enough schedule strength to rocket one of those teams up there toward the top? But I would think you could probably still get somebody in the top 8 if it were going off of rankings. I think in general, I would agree with you there. Get a computer system going, take the 8, let's roll and let's play. Julius, thank you very much for the donation, Julius. Another very generous donation. You guys are awesome tonight, man. Julius says, thanks for continuing to pull these vids out. Best of luck in KC and go Blue Cougs. Okay, so BYU fan. I was go Blue Cougs is a Michigan Houston fan. No, you're a BYU fan. I got it, Julius. Appreciate that. Shout out to the Cougs holding up there into the bargain, continuing to win games this year and stay in those college football playoff rankings. And I much appreciate you tuning into the channel, my friend. I've also got David hanging in here. David McDaniel, thank you for the donation, man. He says, hey, big time. Glad you're able to keep providing content. What do you think the Cats will look like next year, especially at QB? All right, so K-State question in here. Everybody is going to have to live with that, all right? I think next year is a definite question mark and concern, and it's because of QB. I think they will have enough pieces everywhere else. I mean, Felix Anudike, Uzama, Deuce Vaughn, that right there is one heck of a nucleus that you're starting with. I think they'll have enough guys. I like what we've seen from coaching and development in a lot of spots. I like what we've seen from them being able to pull guys out of the transfer portal to plug some holes, which I think they'll be able to do next year. The one thing we have not seen is them develop competent quarterback play outside of Skylar Thompson, who they inherited. So is Will Howard ready? I think he's got to be the guy. I think Jake Rubley, the 4-star recruit, is too far behind. I doubt that he's going to make up that much ground on Howard between now and then. Could be wrong. That'd be a great problem to have if I am wrong. But I think ultimately that's going to fall on Will Howard's shoulders. And as you know, David, from watching K-State this year and last, it's enough to make you nervous. It's enough to make you very nervous. So I think that's frankly the question mark of the Chris Kleiman era right now, and where this is going to go is can they recruit and develop a quarterback that they did not inherit? That is the remaining question that we have left here. This season looks like it's headed toward 8 wins. If I had to guess, with them at 7-3 right now, 2 games left, I would think that they split and go 8-4. So you're talking about 2 8-4 regular seasons outside of the COVID year in between. It's a pretty good start, but all with Skylar Thompson. Can you do it without him? That, to me, will be the telling sign of the Chris Kleiman era. So hope that answers your question, David, and thank you very much once again for that donation. Cincinnati at number 5 in the playoff rankings. I think Cincinnati is going to get a break this week if they can hold up their end of the bargain. If Cincinnati can hold up their end of the bargain and beat SMU, which is going to be a tough task, and that's a big game, I think they're going to be at number 4 because I think Oregon's going to lose. I think Utah gets Oregon. Oregon has been kind of skating along. They have had some very close calls. They lost just a dreadful game to Stanford that looks worse and worse by the day. I mean, that is God, that is aged like milk left out on a counter for weeks and weeks. I mean, that is how that loss is aged. Um, I think it's coming. I think Utah is a tough, gritty program that will eventually be able to get over the hump against Oregon, whether it's this game or whether it's in the Pac-12 championship game. So, yeah, I think it's coming. And I think Cincinnati, at least for a time, will be in that top four if they can win. And we'll see how long that stays. There's a lot of things that will play out after that. But the other thing we really need to talk about is Oklahoma State. And that's probably what I'm going to close with here. I see some Oregon pushback from the Birds word. I'll address that actually first here. But if you do want to pop in and donate here before we get out of here, click the $ below the Say Something box below the chat box. So the Birds word says, see, Kurtz is wrong. Oregon had a midseason rough spot, but have played great the last 2 weeks. Multiple 300-yard rushing games. I'm sorry. We're talking about Washington being a great performance? Like Oregon, I was fair last week beating Washington State. I'm not going to crush Oregon for that. I won't crush Oregon for that. Washington State is a tough team, and they took care of business by 14. But 26-16 at Washington, they did not look very impressive to me at all against Washington, and that's a dreadful team that fired its coach. Fired its coach in year 2 because they were that dreadful. So I don't. I'm not going to give you credit for that. Colorado before that. Colorado is one of the worst FBS teams, or one of the worst Power 5 football teams out there right now. UCLA 34-31. UCLA has not proven to be a very good team. Cal 24-17. That doesn't look that great. They've been fine. I'm probably overstating. I'll give you this, Bird's word. I'll give you this. Did I watch the game against Washington? Hell yes, I watched the game. Bird's word, I try and give you a little credit, and then I come back and see that and get angry. Yes, I sat and watched very much of the Washington game. I did not watch much of Washington State because I fell asleep, but that's the one that I was actually saying I'm impressed with. Okay, Washington has a freaking terrible offense. I can't with you right now, Bird's word. Washington has a garbage offense. So what? They held Washington to 166 yards. No, that's not impressive. To beat Washington by 10 in the year of our Lord 2021 is not an impressive thing at all. So I'm sorry. Oregon has been just okay since the Ohio State game. They've been just okay. And that's fine, especially in a year right now, the way things have played out. Obviously, it's enough to keep them in the playoff rankings. And if they went out, they're going to be in. And I don't even know if I could really complain about it that much if they do win out, as rough as that Stanford loss is, with everything that will probably happen between now and then and the Ohio State win. If they went out, they're going to be in, and that'll be fine. But I'm not going to sit here and throw them a party for holding Washington to 166 yards. Man, look, Bird's word. Can you level with me? I've broken. If I were trying to stay with the narrative, I would just be saying, no, Oregon sucks and all these games have been terrible. I just told you they played a nice game last week against a tough Washington State team, and they've been okay. But the totality of their resume is it's all right. It's all right. They also feature the worst thing on anybody's resume that is actually in contention for a playoff spot right now in the Stanford game. And look, I also said, Bird's word, if they win out, if they beat Utah twice, they'll be in the playoff, and they'll deserve to be in the playoff. As much hemming and hawing as I did about the Stanford game, if they went out, they'll be in the playoff. That's fine. This is not sticking to a narrative. This actually sounds like you trying to stick to a narrative, Bird's word. It sounds like you, potential Oregon fan, Pac-12 fan, whatever it is here, it sounds like you trying to stick stringently to a narrative and not listening to what I'm saying because you don't 100% agree with it. Yes, Oregon is the only top 5 team to beat a top 5 team. Like I said, if they win out, they'll be fine. I don't think they're winning out, and that's where we disagree. But look, fair enough. You're hanging out in this chat, listening to me talk about it. So you're here. You're along for the ride. Greg, appreciate the donation, Greg. Yeah, great point, Blake. Montana held Washington to 7 points. You want me to throw you a party for holding Washington to 166 yards when Montana did it better? Montana did it better, bro. Just chill out. Greg, don't forget the lost odds left K-State for Texas. Love your content and your style. You balance honest assessment of the Big 12 and K-State and the digs on OU and Texas. Keep it up. Well, thank you, Greg. Much appreciate that. Yes, the lost odds was once upon a time at K-State. He was a track coach at K-State way back in the day. I try to be pretty honest. I try to I'm upfront about my biases to you guys, and you guys know them. I don't really hide that, but I also try and be fair. As I was last week in saying that Oregon had a nice performance against Washington State. I try to be fair as well. So I appreciate when you do see that, Greg, and thank you for the generous donation. Thank you for sticking around and watching this entire chat. Let's talk real quick about Oklahoma State's playoff chances, because they're sitting here at number 9 in the playoff rankings with 2 games with Oklahoma potentially left on the schedule, or a game with Oklahoma and Baylor left on the schedule. And honestly, in the eyes of the committee, that might be better if that's what it winds up being, because the committee has so much more respect for Baylor than Oklahoma. So I think if you're Oklahoma State, you'd have to hope that it winds up being Baylor winning out and you playing Baylor in the title game after already beating Oklahoma, and then see what the committee does with you. I think it is possible. I think it is possible that Oklahoma State could find themselves right on the cusp of it. Here's what you need to have happen, though. You need Michigan and Michigan State to lose, which they very well could with Ohio State coming up. Those 2 teams very well could lose. Cincy, all the respect in the world to Cincy, but with games with Houston and SMU potentially left here in the AAC title game, and then obviously what they have this week with SMU, losable. You could definitely see Cincinnati losing. Oregon, we just discussed, probably going to have to see Utah twice. Very well could lose one of those games. So those things would need to happen. The other team that you're really trying to worry about there and that comes into the fray actually is Notre Dame. As quiet as they have, this has been the quietest year for Notre Dame, just sneaking around there in the top 10 now, the playoff rankings here at the end of the year. But that would be the thing. You'd have to hope Oklahoma State has enough juice to jump Notre Dame, which Notre Dame does not have anything impressive left on the schedule. They don't have the conference championship game. So Oklahoma State has an edge there in that they would get Oklahoma and or Baylor and or Oklahoma again. They have an edge there in terms of what they could do to impress the committee. So I think that's the scenario. And then we're talking about, will they get enough respect with that brand being Oklahoma State versus Notre Dame? And we may be having some real strong conversations about that if it were to come down to that. Obviously, a lot has to happen there, which would include Oklahoma State winning the games that they need to win. But I think it's at least worthy of discussion right now, because there is a path. There's a path for Oklahoma State. It's murky and definitely would require a lot of things to happen, but there's at least a path with where they're at right now. Dylan, I'm seeing some chatting about Kansas here. Dylan, John is scared of what Leipold is going to make Kansas in 3 years. Well, I might extend that to 5. I still think, Dylan, it may be a little further away than what you think in terms of, if they're going to be a program that would be at or around K-State's level, which is, a 7-5-ish program year in and year out. I think it probably takes a little bit longer, but Dylan, I don't have negative things to say about Lance Leipold. I think he's been great. I've been pretty positive on Leipold here on the channel. I think he's exactly what Kansas needed. Just a guy who's going to put his nose to the grindstone, not be flashy, and go actually develop an organized program, which you're seeing the results of that. So I would say that I have a lot of respect for him. I think Kansas made the right kind of hire. I think they're being vindicated in what they've seen this year from the Oklahoma and Texas games. But I also don't think that it's like a slam dunk that it works out, because it's still such a tough job and such a tough situation. And you can say what you will about, well, the Texas game happened, now everything's going to be fixed. Texas is an abject disaster. That is a program that is a mess. Kansas, did you watch the KU K-State game? Should I come away from that game feeling like Kansas is close to K-State when it was the number 2 in terms of success rate differential? It was the number 2 biggest blowout in college football, all of college football that week. No, I'm not really scared in the short term. It's it's frustrating that Kansas did finally make like the right hire after a decade and a half of wandering through a wilderness of just some of the worst college football that's ever been played. Yeah, I would prefer to see Kansas still in that position. I think they're going to get to the point where they're not the worst Power 5 football program in America. I think that's a virtual lock right now with Leipold, but I'm not sitting here thinking it's going to be Mark Mangino. Put it that way. I think that's the best way to put it. I respect Leipold. I think he's going to get Kansas to respectability. They will no longer be like the surefire worst P5 football program in the country. But I'm going to need to see a lot more before I start saying that that he is going to be Mark Mangino, because that is a guy that I was legitimately terrified of. Legitimately terrified when Mark Mangino was at Kansas. That was a guy that knew how to win. He had built up that program. If it didn't go haywire there, I kind of shudder to think, what the KU K-State rivalry would have been like, how things would have played out. I don't know that Lance Leipold is that. I'm going to need to see a lot more. And the other thing I would say, Dylan, about that, people probably don't really care about an in-depth Kansas football discussion here, but Jalen Daniels, like you pointed out, Devin Neal and Jalen Daniels, those guys are legit. Well, Devin Neal for sure. Devin Neal is going to be a star. Devin Neal is great. Absolutely excellent. Nothing negative to say about Devin Neal. I don't really have anything negative to say about Jalen Daniels other than if you're going to tout Jalen Daniels, you're also running down Lance Leipold at the same time. Because let me remind you, Dylan, Jalen Daniels was the third string quarterback until Jason Bean got absolutely blasted by Daniel Green, K-State's linebacker, and knocked out of the game. And then the second kid, who was the other kid? Miles Kendrick, he got hurt too. So if not for K-State punking the first two quarterbacks on KU's roster, Jalen Daniels isn't even playing because Lance Leipold did not determine that he needed to be playing. So what does that say about him in terms of talent evaluation there if Daniels really is this star? So it's not all perfect. I know you want to puff your chest out and talk because you're Kansas and you got to win, and I'll let you do that, and that's fine. But just be careful because it's not all perfect. It's not all perfect. Let's see. What did somebody else throw in there? I don't know. I see a Mark Mangino joke. We're probably done. I've hit the point now where we've had Mark Mangino jokes. Let's just go ahead and call it off right there. What did somebody say before John ends the chat here? Cody, before John ends the chat, somebody needs to volunteer to do the Big 12 shorts this week. Need this in my life. That's actually a good idea, man. Maybe keep reminding me about that. We can, I'll have to think about trying to do that for next year. Some Big 12 shorts. That would be a really fun idea. Maybe I can get together with some folks and put some of that together. That would be great. I'm tired. Need to get some food. Need to go watch some basketball. How's the basketball game going? How's K-State Omaha going? Can somebody give me a little update on that here real quick? Just in the 30 seconds before I hop off here. Should be at about halftime right now. K-State and Omaha tonight. Please tell me K-State's up by 20. Please tell me K-State's up by 20. Robbie's giving me a thumbs up. The Bird's word, John, if I sent you a DeAnthony Thomas jersey, would you wear it? What's funny about that is that DeAnthony Thomas, I loved in college. I loved him as a college player. And I vividly remember fist pumping as hard as I almost ever had at that point when the Chiefs drafted him. And I was so excited for DeAnthony Thomas because I thought he was going to be a huge difference maker for the Chiefs. And then he just always disappointed me as a Chief. I always wanted more out of him. Long story short, yes, I would probably wear it, but DeAnthony Thomas is not my favorite. He lost a lot of the luster for me because he just wasn't – he didn't live up to my expectations, which were too high. Admittedly, were too high as a Chiefs fan for him. So, that's a little DeAnthony Thomas story there. Dylan, I'm not a crazy KU fan. Okay, that's fine. That's fine. And I'm cool with some Lance Leipold love. He deserves a lot of credit. I just don't – I think you still need to wait and see on him as to how high that ceiling is going to be. Juan, future Big 12, thank you for the donation, Juan. Future Big 12 basketball discussion in the future. That's something we're going to have to talk about that, and I'll solicit some input from you guys on that. I don't 100% know what my plan is going to be after football season for this. I would certainly like to, at the bare minimum, at least do a once a week live chat on football specific things, because I think there will still be enough topics to come up with things, and I can try and get creative to bring you guys some content as well. So we'll talk about that. Like we'll kind of cross that bridge when we come to it. But basketball is something I can do if there's going to be enough interest in it. But I'm not sure. I'm not sure how much interest there will be in it. So we'll have that discussion. But I appreciate you bringing it up. I appreciate you bringing it up. And if you guys have feedback in the meantime, like hit me up on Twitter at JL Kurtz. Do that as opposed to leaving YouTube comments. I just don't like. There's so much negativity in the YouTube comment section. I just can't take it. So I very rarely read the YouTube comments. Hit me up on Twitter at JL Kurtz if you have suggestions for content ideas or like what you would want to see there. And I will also make a post at some point here on the actual channel. The one where you can like comment on it. Those I will read, like when I just put a post like, hey, what do you guys want to see? Or put a poll up. Excuse me. We can weigh in with some input there as far as that goes. But all right, I'm going to take off. Thank you guys for watching again tonight, and I will talk to you soon.